Hey guys, tonight we are diving nose first into the world of the samurai. But we're not focusing on the cool swords or the epic battles. No, we're going a little deeper, into the nitty-gritty, everyday life. Specifically, we're exploring the hygiene habits or lack thereof that defined their era. Let's just say, if you were suddenly transported back, your first thought wouldn't be about honor or glory, would likely be, what is that smell? You'd probably not survive the first day without a serious case of sensory overload. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And for our little ritual, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always cool to see our little community stretching across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The gentle rocking of the boat is the first thing you notice has stopped. For days, it has been your whole world. A small wooden vessel navigating the coastal waters towards the great capital. But now, there's only a soft bump against a wooden dock. You open your eyes, and the journey is over. You've arrived in Edo. The year is somewhere in the mid-18th century, a time of peace under the Tokugawa shogunate, and this city is the throbbing heart of Japan. As you pay the boatman your fare and step onto the pier, the first wave hits you. It's not a wave of water, but of pure, unfiltered sensory information. The air is thick, humid, and heavy with 1,000 smells you can't immediately place. It's a complex, almost overwhelming bouquet. You stand there for a moment, trying to get your bearings. The city isn't built up, but out, as far as you can see, there's a sprawling ocean of low-slung wooden buildings with dark, tiled roofs, stretching to a hazy horizon. There are no stone skyscrapers, no wide, paved avenues. Everything is wood, bamboo, and paper. The sheer density of it all is staggering. This is, by some estimates, the largest city in the world at this moment, with over 1 million souls packed into its labyrinthine streets, and you can feel it. You can hear it in the constant, humming murmur of the crowd, the sharp clatter of countless wooden sandals giddy on the dirt-packed streets, the distant calls of vendors hawking their wares, and the occasional clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Then you start to walk, marching into the river of people. And that's when you can begin to dissect the smell. Your 21st century nose, accustomed to air fresheners and sterile environments, is working overtime. The dominant bass note is earthy damp soil, the faint smokiness of charcoal fires from thousands of kitchens, and the scent of raw wood. Layered on top of that is the aroma of food. From a nearby stall, the savory scent of grilled deal glazed in sweet soy sauce wafts by, making your stomach rumble. Then it's replaced by the sharp, pungent tang of pickled radishes and the salty smell of miso soup. It's not all unpleasant, but then you cross a small wooden bridge over a murky canal, and the third layer of the city-ass perfume hits you. It's the smell of stagnant water, of refuse, and of human waste. The canals and moats that crisscross Edo are the city-ass arteries, used for transporting goods, but they also serve as a convenient, all-purpose drainage system. You see a woman a little further down nonchalantly tossing a bucket of wastewater into the canal. There are no modern sewage treatment plants here. This brings you to a court truth of this air waste is a part of life, and it's everywhere. In fact, human waste, or what was euphemistically called night soil, was a valuable commodity. It was collected by special merchants from the city-s latrines unsold to farmers in the surrounding countryside as fertilizer. This bizarre, circular economy was incredibly efficient, but it meant the foundational scent of the great metropolis was, to put it politely, deeply organic. You realize this is why the city feels so alive. It's an ecosystem in and of itself, but it's also a tinderbox. You look at the paper shoji screens on the houses, the wooden frames packed so tightly together that a person could easily reach out and touch the neighboring roof. A single stray spark from a cooking fire or a knocked-over lantern could, and often did, lead to catastrophic fires. These places were so common, they were known as the flowers of Edo. Historians still debate the precise population density in the commoner districts and how it contributed to the rapid spread of these fires. But standing here, you don't need an academic paper to understand the risk. You can feel the danger in the air, just as you can smell the city's lifeblood. Your first task is to find your lodging a small room in a nagai, or longhouse, designated for a low-ranking samurai like yourself. You pull the scrap of paper with the address from your sleeve and start walking deeper into the maze. Your senses on high alert, your mind slowly, very slowly, beginning to adjust. You navigate the narrow, winding alleys, each turn taking you deeper into the residential heart of Edo. The main thoroughfares, with their bustling shops and processions, give way to quieter lanes, where the sounds are more intimate, the rhythmic thwack of a woman beating laundry against a stone, the laughter of children playing with bamboo toys, the low murmur of conversation filtering through paper walls. The ground beneath your feet is no longer packed earth but is often uneven, occasionally punctuated by a loose stone or a muddy puddle you have to deftly sidestep. Finally, you find the address. It's not an imposing samurai residence with stone walls and a grand gate, but a long, low-slung wooden building that seems to stretch on forever. This is a nagai, a longhouse, home to dozens of families living side by side in a state of enforced community. The wood is gray and weathered, testament to countless seasons of sun and rain. A single, slightly sagging roof covers the entire structure. You find the landlord, a weary old man with a perpetually unimpressed expression, who checks your letter of introduction with a grunt. He leads you down a narrow external corridor, the floorboards groaning under his weight, and gestures to a sliding door. Here, he says, and that's the extent of your welcome. You slide the door open and step inside. The first thing you notice is the size. It is compact. Your entire world is now a single room of 4.5 tatami mats. By modern standards, it's barely the size of a walk-in closet. The floor is covered in these woven straw mats, cool and slightly fragrant under your feet. There is no furniture, no bed, no table, no chairs. In a small, recessed alcove, the oshirei is a folded-up futon mattress and a single, hard pillow filled with grain husks. During the day, this space is for living. At night, you'll unroll the futon to sleep. In one corner sits a small clay brazier, a hibachi-o, which will serve as your heater in the winter and your stove for simple cooking. The walls are thin wooden frames with paper screens, or shoti. You can hear your new neighbor on the left cough, and the muffled sound of a baby crying from the family on your right. Privacy, you realize instantly, is a concept you'll need to redefine. After a moment of taking in your new, tiny universe, a practical question arises. You need to use the toilet. You poke your head back out and catch the landlord before he disappears. He points wordlessly toward the end of the longhouse. You walk the length of the building, past the doors of your many neighbors, until you find it the communal lavatory, or kaiowei dei. It's a small, unlit wooden shed built over a simple pit. As you slide the door open, the well-ventilated aspect of its design becomes immediately apparent. The air is pungent, a sharp, ammoniac smell that stings the back of your throat. There is no toilet bowl, no running water, just a wooden plank with a hole in it, positioned over the dark void below. You do your business quickly. Later, the landlord explains the rules. The privy is a shared responsibility, but its contents are his exclusive property. He has a contract with a knight's oil merchant who comes on a regular schedule to empty the pit. The golden liquid, as it was sometimes called, is a valuable resource, and he gets paid for it. This is a bizarre but essential part of Edo's economy, a perfect loop of consumption and agriculture. It also explains why HE is so strict about its use. Some historical sources suggest that in certain longhouses, landlords would even give a small rent discount to families with many members, as they produced more of this valuable commodity. You've stumbled upon a strange and smelly form of recycling that is, in its own way, incredibly sustainable. Back in your room, as the daylight begins to fade, you start to unpack the few belongings you carried with you. The concept of a private and suite bathroom is a luxury beyond imagination here. This shared toilet is a social hub of sorts. You will, over time, learn the schedules and habits of your neighbors. You will know who is an early riser and who eats foods that disagree with them. Historians still debate the unwritten rules and social hierarchies that govern these shared spaces. Was there a pecking order for using the communal well in the morning? Did higher-ranking samurai tenants get unofficial priority at the Kaya-way? Standing here in the dimming light, you can imagine it was likely a complex dance of social cues, deference, and passive-aggressive waiting. You sit on the cool tatami, the sounds of the longhouse enveloping you, a symphony of life packed tightly together. The day is done, and you've learned your first major lesson in this world. Personal space is a state of mind, not a physical reality. As the sun rises, casting a soft, hazy light through the paper screens of your small room, you decide it's time to look the part. You can't wander the streets of Edo in your travel-worn clothes. You need to dress like the samurai you are. You pull out your formal attire, which consists of several layers of clothing, primarily made of silk, or cotton. This is your kimono. But as you unfold the garments, a question that never occurred to you in your 21st century life pops into your head. How often do you wash this? The answer, you'll soon discover, is not very often. The process of washing a silk kimono is a delicate and laborious affair. It's not something you can just toss into a tub with some soap. The garment has to be completely disassembled, every single stitch unpicked so that the individual panels of fabric can be washed separately. Each panel would be carefully stretched and pinned to a board to dry, ensuring it didn't shrink or lose its shape. After all that, the entire thing had to be painstakingly sewn back together. This process was so intensive and expensive that it was reserved for only the most severe soiling. For a low-ranking samurai like yourself, a full wash might happen once a season, if you were lucky, maybe even once a year. So, what do you do in the meantime? The key is maintenance and a whole lot of creative repeat use. You learn the art of spot cleaning. A small stain is treated with a bit of water and perhaps a gentle abrasive like rice bran powder. You learn to air your clothes out frequently. At night, you'll hang your kimono on a special rack, allowing air to circulate and carry away some of the day's accumulated grime and odors. This is your primary defense against smelling like you haven't properly bathed or washed your clothes in weeks, which, technically, you haven't. You also learn the importance of layering. The innermost layer, the HDJUBN, is a thin undergarment, usually made of cotton or hemp. This is the piece of clothing that sits directly against your skin, absorbing the majority of your sweat and oils. This undergarment is washed much more frequently than the outer layers, providing a crucial barrier. Think of it as a disposable shield for your more valuable outerwear. Historians often point to this layered system as a highly practical solution to the problem of difficult-to-clean clothing. It's a method of hygiene by proxy. Then, there's the truly ingenious or perhaps just frugal part of the equation. What happens when a garment is too old, too stained, or too worn out to be used as intended? It's not thrown away. That would be unthinkable in a society where every resource is precious. Instead, it begins a second life. A worn-out adult's kimono might be sewn into a child's garment. When the child outgrows it, the fabric might be used to make smaller items, like bags or pouches for carrying odds and ends. When it's too tattered for that, it's cut into strips and used for patching other clothes. And when it's truly falling apart, the last remnants are used as cleaning rags or fuel for the cooking fire. This cycle of use, reuse, and repurpose is a core tenet of life here. You also notice the scent of your clothes. They carry a faint, smoky smell from the charcoal braziers used for heating and cooking. and a subtle aroma of incense. It was common practice to burn incense near clothing while it was airing out, not just for religious or aesthetic reasons, but as a practical form of deodorizing. This is a cold, hard fact of pre-modern life. You don't eliminate odors, you mask them. Your personal scent is a cocktail of your own body, the food you eat, the smoke from your home, and the incense you use to cover it all up. There's a debate among scholars about how much of this was driven purely by economic necessity versus deeply ingrained cultural values like mode and AI. The concept of regretting waste. Was it simply that people couldn't afford new clothes and the expensive cleaning process? Or was there a philosophical aversion to wastefulness at play standing in your tiny room, looking at the intricate weave of your silk kimono? It feels like both. It's a practical solution born of limitation, elevated to a form of cultural wisdom. You carefully begin to dress, layering the garments one by one, feeling the weight and history in the fabric. Today, you are not just putting on clothes, you are putting on a whole new way of thinking about them. Now that you're dressed, there's one final, crucial element of your samurai appearance to attend to your hair. You can't just let it hang loose. You need the iconic hairstyle, the Chon Mage. That distinctive look with the shaved pate and the oiled top knot is more than just a fashion statement, it's a symbol of your status. But getting it right is a daily, and somewhat sticky, ordeal. You don't have a personal stylist, so you'll have to learn to do it yourself, or, more likely, find a local barber. For now, you attempt it yourself, using a small, polished metal mirror that gives you a dim, slightly distorted reflection. First comes the shaving. The top of your head, from the forehead back to the crown, must be completely smooth. You don't have a multi-blade disposable razor with a lubricating strip. Your tool is a simple, straight-edged razor called a kamisori. It's brutally sharp. You wet your scalp with some water and then, with a deep breath and a steady hand, begin to scrape. The technique is to hold the skin taut with one hand while drawing the blade across with the other. One slip, one moment of distraction, then you'll be dabbing at a nasty cut. It's a nerve-wracking process that demands focus and precision. Many samurai, especially those who could afford it, would go to a professional barber every few days to have this done properly. Once the top of your head is shaved to a satisfactory, if slightly raw, smoothness, you can move on to the main event, styling the remaining hair. You gather the long hair from the sides and back of your head and pull it up tightly. This is where the magic and the mess begins. You need a special pomade, or bentiasuke, de biura. This isn't a white, water-based gel. It's a heavy, waxy substance made primarily from rapeseed oil and Japan wax, which is derived from the berries of the sumac tree. It's thick, incredibly sticky, and has a unique, oily smell. You scoop a generous amount onto your fingers and work it thoroughly into your hair. The goal is to make the hair stiff and pliable, capable of holding its shape all day. With your hair thoroughly greased, you comb it straight up and back, then fold it forward over your shaved pate. The end result is a neat, little oiled queue lying flat against your scalp, pointing towards your forehead. You tie it all securely in place with a cord made of paper or silk. The final product looks impressive, a sleek and disciplined hairstyle that says you are a man of order and purpose. The feeling, however, is less than glamorous. Your scalp feels tight, your hair is a sticky, solid mass, and you can already feel the oil starting to slowly, inevitably, run down your neck in the growing humidity of the Edo morning. This brings us to a rather greasy bit of historical trivia. What did you do with all that oil in your hair at night you didn't wash it out? That would be a huge waste of time and precious pomade. Instead, you slept on a special pillow called a takamikuruka. This wasn't a soft, fluffy pillow, but a small, elevated wooden or ceramic headrest. It was designed to support your neck, allowing your head and, more importantly, your meticulously styled top knot to hover in the air, preserving the hairdo for the next day. It looks incredibly uncomfortable, and for the first few weeks, it absolutely is. You'll wake up with a stiff neck, but your hair will be perfect. Historians are still discussing the origins of the Chan mage. The most common theory is that it was practical for battle. Shaving the top of the head helped to reduce heat and itching under a heavy helmet, or kabuto. The top knot itself helped to secure the helmet in place, but by the peaceful Edo period, when most samurai never saw a single day of combat, it had evolved into a powerful social symbol. The style of the top knot, the angle at which it was worn, and even the shape of the shaved area could indicate a man's rank, profession, and even his region of origin. It was a visual resume worn on your head. Attempting to manage this hairstyle yourself, you realized the immense daily commitment it required. It was just about looking good, it was about upholding your identity in a society where appearances meant everything. You give your top knot one last pet, trying to ignore the sticky residue on your fingers, and prepare to face the day. With your clothes and hair in order, you feel a little more prepared to face the world. But before you head out, you decide to attend to one last detail of your morning routine: your teeth. You can't exactly smile with confidence if your breath is a walking disaster. And oral hygiene was, in its own way, just as important to the samurai as it is to us today. The methods, however, were starkly different. You look around your tiny room for a toothbrush and toothpaste, and of course, find none. Instead, you find the tools of 18th century dentistry. Your primary tool is a efugase yodai. This is a sort of primitive, all-in-one toothbrush. It's a small twig, typically from the willow or dogwood tree, one end of which has been frayed into a soft, brush-like tuft. You would chew on this end to soften it, and then use the bristles to scrub your teeth. It's surprisingly effective at removing larger bits of food. The other end of the twig is often sharpened to a point, creating a handy, built-in toothpick for getting at more stubborn particles. It's an ingenious, biodegradable, and completely disposable tool. You'd use one and then simply toss it. But what about toothpaste? You don't have a minty fresh gel. Instead, you have this powder, or amigo kiga. You open a small ceramic pot to find a fine, grayish powder inside. The ingredients could vary, but a common recipe involved powdered salt, baked clay, and sometimes ground up seashells or charcoal. You dip your frayed fusa yodi into the powder and begin to scrub. The sensation is gritty. The taste is intensely salty, not sweet or minty. It's abrasive, designed to physically scrape the plaque and stains off your teeth. While it probably did a decent job of polishing, modern dentists would likely be horrified by the potential damage to your enamel. Beyond this daily routine, you encounter some other, more peculiar, oral hygiene practices. For instance, the simple act of gargling with salty water was a common practice, believed to cleanse the mouth and tighten the gums. And then, there was the curious trend of toro goro, or teeth blackening, while more commonly associated with married aristocratic women. It was also practiced by some samurai as a status symbol. The process involved painting the teeth daily with a dark liquid made from iron filings dissolved in vinegar, which was then mixed with a vegetable tannin powder. This created a rich, black lacquer that coated the teeth, protecting them from decay. It was also considered highly beautiful. To the modern eye, a smile full of blackened teeth might look startling. But, in Edo, Japan, it was a sign of sophistication and maturity. The stark white of unpainted teeth was sometimes seen as garish or even animalistic. This brings up a fun and slightly gross cold water fact of the era. One of the most common toothpastes used by the general populace was a powder made from the dried and ground up droppings of the nightingale. Yes, bird poop. It was believed that the uric acid and other enzymes in the droppings had powerful whitening and cleansing properties. This wasn't just for teeth, it was also a key ingredient in high-end facial treatments used by geisha and actors to lighten and smooth the skin. While you, as a samurai, might stick to your more manly salt-based powder. The knowledge that some of the most beautiful smiles in Edo were powered by bird droppings is a humbling thought. Historians are still debating the overall effectiveness of these traditional methods. Skeletal remains from the Edo period show a surprising number of people with relatively healthy teeth, suggesting that while their methods were primitive, the low-sugar diet played a huge role. Cavities were certainly an issue, but perhaps less rampant than in later, more sugar-addicted societies. What happened if you did get a bad tooth? There were no professional dentists as we know them. A troublesome tooth was simply pulled, often by a specialist who was more of a strongman than a doctor, using a pair of pliers and no anesthetic. The thought alone is enough to make you scrub a little harder with your salty twig brush. You finish your routine, swishing your mouth with a bit of water from a cup. Your mouth feels salty and dry, but your teeth do feel cleaner. You are ready to go, leaving the strange world of Edo-era oral care behind you, at least until tomorrow morning. It's midday, and your stomach is rumbling. The scent of that grilled eel you smelled yesterday is still fresh in your memory. It's time to confront the heart of your new home, the kitchen. Of course, in a 4.5 tatami mat room, the kitchen is less a separate room and more of a designated corner. Your entire culinary world is contained in a space smaller than a modern bathroom sink. You look at your setup: the small clay hibachi for heat, a single iron pot, a cutting board, a knife, and a few ceramic bowls. There is no running water, no refrigerator, and certainly no concept of antibacterial spray. Your water source is the communal well, located in the central courtyard of the Nage-ii. You take your wooden bucket and join the small queue of women and children waiting their turn. The well is a social center, a place for gossip and news exchange. You haul up a bucket of cool, clear water. It looks clean enough, but your 21st century brain is screaming about invisible microbes. You have no way to test its potability. You just have to trust that it's safe. For the most part, it probably is, but the risk of contamination is ever present, especially after heavy rains, or if the well is located too close to a leaking latrine pit. Back in your room, you prepare to make a simple meal. Today's menu is steamed rice, a small piece of salted fish, and some pickled vegetables. First, the rice. You wash it in a bowl, using the precious water you just hauled. The washing process is essential, not just for cleaning but for removing excess starch. Then you place it in your iron pot with a carefully measured amount of water, then set it over the charcoal fire in the hibachi. Managing the fire is a skill in itself. Too hot and the rice burns to cool and it becomes a mushy paste. Next, the fish. There's no refrigerator to keep it fresh. The vast majority of fish and meat consumed daily is preserved in some way, usually by salting, drying, or pickling. The piece of mackerel you have is stiff and heavily encrusted with salt. You rinse some of the salt off, but it will still be incredibly salty by modern standards. This heavy reliance on salt is a double-edged sword. It's a brilliant preservative in a world without refrigeration, but the high-sodium diet contributed to health problems like high blood pressure, which historical texts suggest was a common ailment. You place the fish on a small grill over the same charcoal fire. As it cooks, you turn your attention to the vegetables. Your cutting board is a simple slab of wood. You give it a quick wipe with a damp cloth before chopping some pickled daikon radish. You have no idea what was chopped on this board before, or how well it was cleaned. Cross-contamination is not a concept that exists in the popular consciousness. The same knife that cuts a fish might be used to chop vegetables moments later with only a cursory rinse. This lack of germ theory is one of the most significant invisible dangers of the era. One of the more fascinating and slightly unsettling kitchen secrets of the time revolves around tofu. Tofu was a dietary staple, a cheap and versatile source of protein, but it spoils quickly. A quirky piece of folk wisdom suggested that to keep tofu fresh for an extra day, you should store it in water with a few live tadpoles. The belief was that the tadpoles would eat any bacteria that started to grow on the surface of the tofu. keeping it fresh. While it sounds utterly bizarre, it's a surprisingly common anecdote in historical accounts of everyday life. Whether it actually worked is, of course, highly debatable, but it highlights the kind of creative, pre-scientific solutions people devised to cope with food spoilage. As your meal comes together, the room fills with the smell of steam, smoke, and grilling fish. You plate it all on your simple ceramic ware. The rice is a little soft, the fish is salty, but it's a hot, filling meal. You eat sitting on the tatami floor, your senses gradually calmating. You're learning to live with a different level of risk. Historians still argue about the true impact of pre-modern food preparation on public health. Some argue that the use of fire, salt, and vinegar created a relatively safe food environment, while others point to the constant threat of foodborne illness as a major factor in the era's high mortality rates. You take another bite of your salty fish, wash it down with a sip of lukewarm water from the well, and decide not to think about it too hard. For now, you are simply grateful for a full belly. You've settled into a routine, and with that comes a regular diet. The life of a low-ranking samurai isn't one of lavish banquets. Your meals are built around a principle of rustic simplicity. The core of every single meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner is rice, specifically white rice. And this is where one of the era's most fascinating untragic health stories begins. For centuries, the Japanese aristocracy had favored polished white rice, stripping away the outer bran and germ, leaving only the soft, white endosperm. It was considered more refined and easier to digest than brown rice. By the Edo period, this preference had trickled down to the urban warrior class. As a samurai living in the city, even a low-ranking one, you are expected to eat white rice. It's a status symbol. Brown rice was for farmers and peasants. The problem is, that discarded outer layer of the rice kernel contains a vital nutrient thiamine, also known as vitamin bone. Your daily diet consists of a large portion of this polished white rice, accompanied by a small amount of salty protein like grilled fish or tofu, a bowl of miso soup, and some pickled vegetables. T.S. Yukai Imono. It's not a bad-tasting diet, but it is dangerously lacking in nutritional diversity. You're getting plenty of carbohydrates, but very little in the way of fresh fruit, red meat, or a variety of vitamins, and the thiamine deficiency is the real killer. Over time, you might start to feel the effects. A strange lethargy you can't shake, a weakness in your legs, a tingling or numbness in your toes. This was the onset of a disease that plagued urban Japan, especially the samurai class beriberi. It was so common in the capital that it was known as the Edo ailment. No one understood what caused it. Doctors of the time, working with traditional Chinese medical theory, blamed it on bad miasma, humidity, or even a spiritual imbalance. They had no concept of vitamins. The irony is that the poor farmers in the countryside, who subsisted on brown rice, barley, and millet, were largely immune to beriberi. The very food that marked them as lower class was protecting them. This created a strange paradox where the supposedly superior diet of the urban elite was, in fact, poisoning them. It's a stark example of how cultural values can sometimes lead to disastrous health outcomes. Then there's the matter of what you're drinking. You've gotten used to the taste of well water, but you learn quickly that you should never, ever drink it raw. All water for drinking is boiled first. This isn't because people understood germ theory. They didn't know about E. coli or cholera. Rather, it was based on an understanding of purity and the belief that raw water was hard on the stomach and could cause internal imbalances or chills. Whatever the reasoning, this practice of boiling water for tea or for making soup was a huge, if accidental, public health win. It undoubtedly saved countless lives by killing off waterborne pathogens. Despite this, intestinal parasites were a fact of life. One of the most common ways they spread was through the use of that night Soil fertilizer, you learn it about on your first day. Human waste, teeming with the eggs of worms and other parasites, was spread on the fields where vegetables were grown. If those vegetables, especially things eaten raw or lightly pickled like radishes and cucumbers, weren't washed with meticulous care, the cycle of infection was complete. I look at the historical and archaeological evidence, particularly the analysis of preserved soil from old latrines, confirms that parasitic infections were nearly universal. It was just a normal, if unpleasant, part of being alive. Historians still debate the full extent of nutritional deficiencies in the samurai diet. While the beriberi link is well established, there's ongoing discussion about other issues like vitamin C or iron deficiencies. Were the small amounts of pickled vegetables enough to stave off scurvy? Did the seafood provide enough iron? The answer is likely just barely. The samurai diet was a masterclass in subsistence, finely tuned to provide just enough to function, but with very little margin for error. You finish your bowl of rice, feeling the temporary satisfaction of a full stomach, blissfully unaware that the very foundation of your meal is slowly sapping your strength. You just know that tonight, like every night, the city of Edo will go to sleep well fed, but not necessarily well nourished. After a few days of spot cleaning and daring out your clothes, you feel an undeniable, primal need for a proper wash, not just your clothes, but your entire body. The accumulated grime of the city, the stickiness of your hair pomade, and the general feeling of being less than fresh have reached a tipping point. It's time for a bath, but a private bath in your tiny Nage room is out of the question. For that, you must go to the Sentu, the public bathish. You grab a small towel, a cloth for washing, and a bag of rice bran powder, the era's equivalent of soap, and head down the street. It's easy to find the local Sentu. You just look for the distinctive curtain noren hanging over the entrance and listen for the sounds of splashing water and cheerful chatter. You pay a small fee at the entrance and step inside. The bathish is divided into two main sections, a changing area and the bathing area itself, separated by a sliding door to keep the steam in. The changing room, or datsuijo, is a bustling, humid space. You find an empty wicker basket to put your clothes in and start to undress. There are no private lockers or cubicles. You are surrounded by a dozen other men of all ages and professions, merchants, craftsmen, fellow samurai, all in various states of undress. The initial feeling of vulnerability quickly fades into a sense of communal ease. Modesty is a different concept here. Once you're completely naked, you pick up your small towel and head for the bathing area. You slide open the wooden door and are hit by a wall of thick, hot steam. The air is heavy with the smell of hot water, damp wood, and the faint, nutty scent of rice bran soap. The room is noisy and full of life. The floor is made of stone or wood, slick with water, and the walls are sweating with condensation. Before you even think about getting into the main bath, you must follow the cardinal rule of the Sentu: you wash before you bathe. You find a spot in the washing area, called the Oribe. You take a small wooden bucket, fill it with hot water from a basin, and begin to meticulously scrub yourself down. You pour bucket after bucket of hot water over your head and body, rinsing away the dirt and sweat of the past few days. You use your cloth and the rice bran powder to scrub your skin until it's pink. This pre-wash is not just a suggestion, it's a strict and enforced rule of etiquette. The main bathtub is for soaking and relaxing, not for cleaning. To enter the bath while still dirty would be a major social faux pas, earning you glares and possibly a sharp rebuke from the other bathers. Once you are thoroughly cleaned and rinsed, you can finally approach the main event, the large, communal tub. It's a deep, wooden tub, filled to the brim with steaming hot water, and it is very, very hot. You ease yourself in. The heat a delightful shock to your system. The water is deep enough to come up to your neck, and the heat soaks into your muscles, melting away the tension. But as you relax, you notice something. The water is not crystal clear, it's slightly cloudy. That's because you are sharing this bathwater, not just with the men currently in the tub with you, but with everyone who has come before you today. The water in the tub was changed once a day, in the morning. This brings us to a rather intimate piece of bathing trivia. At home, for families who had their own wooden tubs for all, the practice was even more communal. The entire family would use the same tub of water in a specific order. The guest of honor or the head of the household would go first, followed by the other men, then the women, and finally the children and servants. The idea of draining the tub after one person was seen as incredibly wasteful. Water had to be held and heated over a fire, a labor-intensive process. So, sharing bathwater wasn't just common, it was the standard. Historians still debate the hygienic implications of this practice. On one hand, the pre-washing protocol meant people were relatively clean when they got in. On the other hand, sharing water is a very effective way to share skin conditions and other ailments. Some scholars argue that the high temperature of the water may have killed some bacteria, while others maintain it was a significant public health risk. Lying in the hard, cloudy water of the Seine too, surrounded by strangers, you can understand both sides of the argument. It's a trade-off. In exchange for the simple, profound luxury of a hot soak, you accept a certain level of shared experience. You lean your head back against the wooden edge of the tub, close your eyes, and let the sounds and steam of the bathish wash over you. For the first time in days, you feel truly clean, or at least clean enough. Feeling refreshed from your trip to the Seine too, you stride back to your nage with a newfound sense of well-being. That life in Edo is filled with small, physical challenges, and hygiene isn't just about bathing. It's also about dealing with the everyday wear and tear on your body's largest organ, your skin. The sun is strong, the work is sometimes manual, and minor injuries are common. Your 21st century medicine cabinet full of antiseptic creams, sunblock, and hydrokeratosin is a distant dream. Here, you must rely on a combination of folk wisdom, herbal remedies, and a healthy dose of stoicism. One of the most common issues you face is sunburn. You might spend a day on patrol or assisting with some public works project, and by evening, your neck and forearms are radiating heat, glowing a painful read. There's no SPF 50. The primary defense against the sun is physical wide-brimmed, straw-hat suit gasse for long journeys and the simple wisdom of staying in the shade when possible. But when you do get burned, the go-to remedy is often something cool and soothing. A popular choice would be the gel-like substance from the inside of an aloe vera plant, or rook-ai as it's known here. The plant was cultivated for its medicinal properties, and its cooling, anti-inflammatory effects were well understood. You'd snap off a leaf, split it open, and rub the cool gel directly onto your scorched skin. For other minor skin irritations, like rashes or insect bites, the solutions were equally organic. A common treatment was a paste made from ground-up mugwort, known as yomogi. This versatile herb was a cornerstone of traditional medicine, believed to have properties that could reduce swelling and itching. You'd mix the powdered herb with a little water to create a thick green paste and apply it as a poultice. Another popular option for insect bites was to simply apply a dab of sage. The alcohol content would create a cooling sensation and was believed to purify the bite. Then, there are the inevitable small cuts and scrapes from daily life, nicking yourself while shaving your pate, getting a splinter from a floorboard, or scraping your knuckle while training. The concept of microscopic bacteria causing infection doesn't exist. Instead, the concern is about stopping the bleeding and closing the wound. For a very minor cut, you might simply press on it until it stops bleeding. For something a little more serious, the methods get more creative. One surprising but documented technique was to apply a clean, fresh spitterbear to the wound. The fine, sticky threads would act as a natural mesh, helping the blood to clot and forming a makeshift bandage. It sounds bizarre, But the silk proteins in spitter bears do have properties that can aid coagulation. A more mainstream approach involved using the fluffy, charred ashes of burnt cattle reeds, known as hoko. This sterile, absorbent powder would be packed into a wound to stop bleeding and was believed to have healing properties. The process of charring would, coincidentally, kill any bacteria on the reeds, making it a relatively clean option. These remedies were part of a vast body of knowledge passed down through generations, a form of practical science based on centuries of trial and error. Historians and medical anthropologists are still piecing together the full pharmacopoeia of the Edo period. For every effective remedy like aloe or mugwort, there were likely dozens of ineffective, or even harmful ones based on pure superstition. There's an ongoing debate about how much of this folk medicine was genuinely therapeutic versus how much was simply a placebo effect. Did applying a specific type of pickled plum to a bruise actually help it heal faster? Or did the ritual simply make the person feel better? The line between medicine and magic was often blurry. You look at your own hands. They are rougher than they used to be, with a few small calluses forming from gripping your practiced sword. Your skin is tanned from the sun. It's the skin of someone who lives a more physical, less sheltered life. You realize that the goal here isn't to maintain perfect, unblemished skin. It's about functionality. A scar is not a flaw, it's a record of an experience. A callus is not ugly, it's a sign of strength. The samurai approach to skincare, like their approach to so many things, is pragmatic and unadorned. You learn to live with the small imperfections, treating them with the simple, earthy remedies available, and moving on. You've grown accustomed to many of the unique sensory experiences of Edo. You can now tell the difference between the smell of roasting tea and burning charcoal. You're even getting used to the communal intimacy of the sen too. But there is one aspect of daily life that remains a formidable nose-pinching challenge: the toilet. Your brief introduction to the communal KOA at your Nage-A was just the beginning. To truly understand the sanitation, or lack thereof, of the era, you need to take a deeper dive into the world of the Japanese latrine. The design is simple and universal. Whether it's the shared privy at your longhouse or a slightly more private one in a wealthier residence, it's almost always a small, separate structure or a designated room at the edge of the house, for obvious olfactory reasons. Inside, you find a pit, sometimes lined with clay pots or wooden barrels, and a place to squat. There might be a wooden plank to stand on, or in fancier models, a porcelain squatter bowl set into the floor. There is no flush mechanism, no S-bend pipe to block odors. The pit is open to the room below you. The smell is, to put it mildly, breathtaking. It's a rich, complex aroma of ammonia and decomposition that seems to cling to the very air. To combat this, people employed a variety of low-tech solutions. A small box of dried tea leaves of fragrant wood shavings might be kept in the corner to absorb some of the odor. Incense was burned almost constantly, but these were feeble attempts to mask a powerful force of nature. You learn to breathe through your mouth, to be quick, and not to linger. But this is where things get interesting from an economic perspective. That pit beneath you isn't just a waste receptacle, it's a treasure chest. You've already learned that the night's soil is collected and sold as fertilizer. This business was incredibly organized. There were powerful guilds of night soil merchants who had exclusive contracts for different districts of the city. They would send collectors around on a regular basis, usually in the dead of night, with large buckets and carts. These men were known as Ko Ikashi, and their trade, while smelly, was a respectable and oft unlucrative one. This led to a quirky and uniquely Japanese phenomenon. The value of waste was not uniform. The waste from a wealthy daimyo's mansion, for instance, was considered top grade. The reasoning was that the wealthy ate a much richer and more varied diet: more fish, more vegetables, more steak. Therefore, Their excrement was believed to be more nutrient-rich and would produce better crops. Farmers would pay a premium for high-class fertilizer. There are historical records of bidding wars breaking out between rival fertilizer merchants for the contract to a particularly prestigious samurai household. The privy of a high-ranking lord was, quite literally, a gold mine. Conversely, the waste from the poorer districts, or from places like hospitals where people were sick, was considered low quality and fetched a much lower price. This created a strange and detailed hierarchy of human waste that mirrored the social hierarchy of the city itself. It's a level of recycling and resourcefulness that is almost impossible to imagine today. Historians are still fascinated by this system. There's a debate about how much this trade influenced the architecture and social dynamics of the city. Did landlords intentionally design their nagae with easily accessible latrines to make collection more efficient? Did the regular visits from the Oikashi create a unique, nocturnal rhythm to the city? It seems likely. The system was a cornerstone of Edo's sustainability, allowing a city of over 1 million people to feed itself using the agricultural land that surrounded it, creating a closed-loop system of consumption and production. One small, practical detail you have to get used to is the toilet paper. You won't find soft, quilted rolls here. The most common tool for cleaning oneself was a simple wooden or bamboo stick, called a chugai. This spatula-like stick was used to scrape oneself clean. In communal toilets, there would often be a bucket of water and a cloth to wash the stick after use, ready for the next person. In more private settings, you might have your own personal stick. Alternatively, large, soft leaves were also used. The concept of disposable paper for this purpose was a luxury reserved for the very wealthy. The idea of a shared cleaning stick is a significant mental hurdle to overcome, a stark reminder of the different standards of personal hygiene. You exit the kaiaway taking a deep breath of the comparatively fresh air outside, with a newfound appreciation for the complex, smelly, and surprisingly sophisticated world that exists just beneath your feet. One morning, you wake up feeling decidedly unwell. Your head is pounding, your throat is scratchy, and you have a feverish chill that has nothing to do with the morning air. You've caught a cold, or perhaps something worse. In the 21st century, you'd reach for some over-the-counter flu medicine. Drink plenty of fluids, and rest. Urinito. The experience of being sick is a journey into a completely different understanding of the human body. Your first stop isn't a pharmacy, but rather your own small kitchen corner. Folk remedies are the first line of defense. A common treatment for a cold would be kuzo yuyu, a thick, comforting drink made from arrowroot starch, hot water, and perhaps a bit of grated ginger and honey. It's warm, soothing for the throat, and easy on the stomach. Another popular remedy is tamago's ache, a sort of Japanese eggnog, made by beating an egg with sugar and hot sake. The logic was that the alcohol would induce a sweat, helping to break the fever. While its medicinal value is questionable, the comforting ritual of it was probably half the cure. But what if your condition is more serious? Let's say you have a nasty stomach bug, a common ailment given the era's food safety standards. The simple home remedies aren't cutting it. It's time to see a doctor. A doctor, or ishi, in this period is not a scientist in a white coat. He is a scholar, trained not in biology or chemistry, but in a complex medical system imported from China. Based on concepts like yin and yang, the 5 elements go Gyoo, and the flow of vital energy, or qi. When the doctor arrives at your small room, he doesn't take your temperature with a thermometer or measure your blood pressure. His diagnostic tools are his senses. He will ask you detailed questions about your symptoms, your diet, and even your mood. He will observe the color of your skin and your tongue. He will listen to the sound of your breathing and your voice. Then most importantly, he will take your pulse. This isn't just a simple check for your heart rate. A trained physician would feel for the pulse in multiple positions on both wrists, believing that the quality, rhythm, and strength of the pulse in each spot corresponded to a different internal organ. It was a highly complex art that could take a lifetime to master. After his diagnosis, perhaps he determines you have an excess of dampness or a blockage of qi in your spleen. He will prescribe a treatment. This won't be a single pill. It will be a carefully selected combination of herbs, roots, bark, and minerals that you must acquire from an apothecary and boil into a pungent, bitter tea. This is Kimpo medicine. A prescription might include dried ginger to warm the stomach, licorice root to harmonize the other ingredients, and perhaps something more exotic like dried cicada shells or powdered deer antler, each chosen for its specific energetic properties. The smell of the medicine brewing in your iron pot will fill your tiny room, a potent, earthy aroma that is the scent of healing in this world. The taste is often intensely bitter, something you have to force down. There are no sugar-coated pills here. The bitterness of the medicine was often considered part of the cure, a sign of its potency. One of the more peculiar treatments you might encounter, especially for ailments like muscle pain or stiffness, is moxibustion, or okayu. This involves placing a small cone of dried mugwort, the same yomogi used for skin pastes, on a specific acupuncture point on the body and lighting it on fire. The cone is removed just before it burns the skin, creating a moment of intense, focused heat that is believed to stimulate the flow of qi and blood. It leaves behind a small, circular burn mark, and the bodies of older people were often covered in these little scars, a roadmap of a lifetime of aches and pains treated with fire. Historians are deeply engaged in studying the efficacy of Kimpo medicine. It's a contentious field. Modern science has confirmed that many of the herbs used to have active pharmacological compounds. Ephedra, for example, used in many cold remedies, is a powerful decongestant. However, other ingredients seem to have no discernible effect, and the diagnostic framework of yin-yang and qi is considered unscientific by Western medical standards. The debate lies in whether the system worked as a whole. Was it the active ingredients, the powerful placebo effect of the elaborate rituals, or a combination of both for you? Lying on your futon, sipping your bitter herbal tea, the academic debate is irrelevant. You are putting your faith in a system that has been used for 1,000 years. You close your eyes, hoping the herbs, the rest, and a little bit of luck will be enough to make you well again. After a few days of rest and bitter herbal teas, your fever breaks and your strength returns. It's time to get back to your duties as a samurai. And for you, that means training. You are expected to maintain your martial skills, even in this era of prolonged peace. So, you head to the local dojo, a training hall dedicated to the art of the sword. Kenjutsu, the dojo is not a bright, air-conditioned gym. It's a simple, unadorned building, a single large room with a polished wooden floor, taper-screened windows, and a small shrine at one end. As you slide open the heavy wooden door and step inside, the atmosphere hits you. It's an environment of intense focus and discipline, but it's also an environment with a very specific scent. The air is thick with the smell of old wood, the faint, sweet scent of the tatami mats lining the edges of the room, and something else, the unmistakable, sharp, and slightly sour smell of old, dried sweat. This is not the fresh sweat of a quick workout. It's the ingrained odor of countless hours of strenuous physical exertion that has soaked into the very fabric of the building. You bow to the master and to the dojo itself before you begin your warm-up. You are dressed in your training uniform, the kakoji dubbing jewels, a durable jacket and pants made of thick, quilted cotton. It's designed to withstand the rigors of practice, but it's also incredibly absorbent. There are no modern, moisture-wicking synthetic fabrics here. Your cotton uniform will soak up every drop of sweat you produce. The training is grueling. You start with solo practice, or suburi, endlessly repeating basic cuts with your bakken, a heavy wooden practice sword. The movements are precise and powerful, engaging your entire body. Sweat quickly begins to bead on your forehead and run down your back. Next, you move on to drills with a partner. You practice blocks, parries, and strikes. The room fills with the sharp crack of wood hitting wood and the loud, guttural shouts, or kirai, that accompany each strike. The energy is explosive. The air becomes heavy and humid from the collective breathing and exertion of a dozen men in a confined space. You put on your protective gear for sparring. This consists of a padded helmet with a metal grill armored gloves coat, a chest protector and a waist guard TR. The gear is made of lacquered bamboo, leather, and heavily padded cotton, and it stinks. There is no polite way to put it. The gear is shared among students, or if you had your own, it's used day after day. The inside of the helmet, in particular, where your face is pressed against the padding, is saturated with the sweat of hundreds of previous training sessions. It has a powerful, fermented smell that you learn to tolerate and then to ignore. After a few hours of intense practice, you are completely drenched. Your keikoji is heavy with sweat, clinging to your skin. The floorboards around you are slick. You are exhausted but exhilarated. At the end of the session, you and the other students line up, bow to the master, and then begin the cleaning ritual. You all get down on your hands and knees with damp rags and wipe down the entire wooden floor. This isn't janitorial work, it's considered a part of the training, an act of respect and humility, meant to polish your spirit as well as the floor. It's also a practical matter of hygiene, wiping away the puddles of sweat and dirt from the day's practice. A fascinating bit of trivia about dojo hygiene is the concept of cleanliness through friction, the constant polishing of the floor by generations of students with their hands, knees, and rags was believed to create a kind of sterile surface. The wood would become so smooth and sealed by the repeated rubbing that it was thought to be naturally resistant to dirt. While this wouldn't stand up to a modern microbial swab test, there is a certain logic to it. De non-porous, polished surface is indeed easier to keep clean than a rough, unfinished one. Historians debate the role of the dojo in the social life of the samurai. Was it purely a place for martial training, or was it also a kind of social club, a place where bonds were forged and hierarchies were reinforced standing here, surrounded by your sweating, dancing comrades? It feels like both. The shared struggle, the shared smells, and the shared ritual of cleaning create a powerful sense of camaraderie. You take off your foul-smelling helmet, your hair plastered to your head, and take a deep breath of the thick, familiar dojo air. You may not be clean, but you feel purified in a different way. Your mind cleared and your body honed. You fold your sweat-soaked uniform, knowing it will be barely dry by your next session. Your training in the dojo is essential, but a samurai's identity is ultimately tied to his role as a warrior, and the ultimate symbol of that role is his suit of armor, the yuruhai. You don't wear it every day, of course. In the peaceful Edo period, putting on a full suit of armor is a rare, ceremonial occasion, perhaps for a particular procession, a formal display, or a special training exercise. Today is one of those days. Your local lord has commanded a demonstration of martial traditions, and you are to participate in full battle dress. Your armor is not stored in a damp corner of your tiny room. It's a prized possession, carefully kept in a large, lacquered wooden box called a gasoke bitsu. Opening the box releases a unique smell, a mix of old leather, lacquered wood, silk cords, and the faint, metallic tang of iron. It's the smell of dormant power. You begin the long and complicated process of putting it on, a task you often need help with. First comes the undergarment, a simple tunic and trousers called the yoroi hit at R. This is the first layer of what will become a very hot and stuffy outfit. Over this, you strap on the greaves to protect your shin's sun, and the armored sleeves coat, which are a complex mix of fabric and mail with iron plates sewn onto them. Next comes the main part of the armor, the cuirass, which protects your torso. and the skirt-like tsetsuzuri that hang from it to protect your hips and thighs. Finally, the shoulder guards sodi are attached, and the whole assembly is crowned with the helmet, or kabuto, often adorned with a fierce mask, menpo. The entire suit is a beautiful and intimidating work of art, made from dozens of small iron nor leather plates goes and laced together with colorful silk cords. It's designed to be both strong and flexible, but as you finish strapping on the final pieces, you become acutely aware of its other qualities. It is incredibly heavy, easily weighing over 20 kilograms 45 pounds. Your movement is restricted, and your vision is narrowed by the helmet, and almost immediately, you start to sweat. The armor is an oven. There is very little ventilation. Your body heat is trapped inside, and the layers of fabric and lacquered plates create a personal sauna. Within minutes of just standing still, you can feel sweat trickling down your back and chest, soaking into the euro I hit that are. During the demonstration, you go through a series of slow, deliberate martial forms. The exertion is minimal, but the heat is intense. You can feel the sweat pooling in the small of your back and drenching the padded lining of your helmet. After the ceremony is over, you go through the laborious process of taking it all off. Your undergarments are completely soaked, as if you just jumped into a river. But the real issue is the armor itself. The silk cords, the leather straps, and the cotton padding inside the helmet and sleeves have absorbed a significant amount of your sweat, and you can't just throw it in the washing machine. Cleaning the armor is a painstaking process. The metal and lacquer plates are carefully wiped down with a soft, dry cloth to prevent rust and preserve the finish. The silk cords are brushed to remove dust. But what about the smell? The sweaty fabric components can't be easily removed or washed. The solution is the same as with your kimono. You air it out. The armor is placed on a special stand and kit, then left in a well-ventilated, shady spot to dry completely. This could take days. Incense might be burned nearby to help mask the developing odor. This brings us to a slightly pungent piece of historical trivia. Samurai would often have a particular blend of incense they favored, and this scent would permeate their armor. In the chaos of a real battlefield, this personal scent could, some sources claim, serve as a way to identify a warrior. For better or worse, an ally might recognize a friend by his familiar scent, or a foe might come to associate a particular fragrance with a dangerous opponent. Your armor didn't just have a look, it had a smell profile. Historians are still exploring the practical challenges of maintaining armor, especially during long military campaigns. How did soldiers on the march prevent their armor from rusting in the rain or falling apart from constant use and sweat? The logistics must have been a nightmare. There's a debate about whether the elaborate silk lacing on high-end armors was a liability in the field, prone to snapping or rotting, compared to the simpler, more robust construction of lower-grade armor. Standing next to your drying uroi, you can smell the evidence. It's the scent of honor and tradition. Yes, but it's also the very human smell of hard work, trapped in layers of silk and steel. You make a mental note to let it air for at least 2 full days before putting it back in its box. The ceremonial display of armor was one thing, but your duties as a samurai sometimes require you to leave the relative comforts of Edo. A summons arrives from a senior official. You are to be part of a small retinue escorting a magistrate to a town a few days' journey away. This means packing up, leaving your naga and hitting the road, and as you'll soon discover, maintaining even your Edo period standard of hygiene becomes 100 times more difficult when you are on the march. Your preparations are minimal. You pack a change of undergarments, your trusty FUSA yodi for your teeth, the small towel, and not much else. Heavy luggage is a liability on the road. You travel on foot, following one of the great highways that connect Edo to the rest of Japan. Like the Tokaido, these roads are well-maintained dirt paths, wide enough for processions and Palik Nunes, and dotted with post towns Shukuba at regular intervals where travelers can rest for the night. The first challenge is simply staying clean. The roads are dusty and dry, whether on the muddy mess in the rain. Your feet and lower legs are constantly caked in a layer of grime. The hem of your kimono becomes soiled almost immediately. You learn to walk with a particular gait to avoid kicking up too much dust onto yourself. At the end of the day, your face is streaked with dirt and sweat. The second, and more pressing, challenge is water. On the road, you can't just pop over to a trusted communal well. You drink from streams, rivers, or wells in the post towns. The quality is a complete gamble. A clear, fast-flowing mountain stream is probably safe, but water near a town or a farm could be contaminated with anything. Your leader, a seasoned veteran of the road, insists that all drinking water be boiled. But sometimes, when you are hot and thirsty, the temptation to drink directly from a cool-looking spring is immense. This is how travelers, sickness, or misatari literally water strike, becomes your constant, invisible companion. Diarrhea on a long march is not just uncomfortable, it can be dangerously dehydrating. Then, there is the issue of personal sanitation. There are no public restrooms along the highway. When nature calls, you simply find a discreet spot off the road. The forests and fields lining the great highways of Japan served as a vast, open-air latrine for millions of travelers over the centuries. You learn to look for a spot with some privacy and to be mindful of where you step. There's no toilet paper. Of course, you make do with large, soft leaves you can identify as non-poisonous. It's a humbling experience that strips away all pretense of urban refinement. A curious piece of road trip trivia involves your footwear. You wear simple straw sandals, or war AJ. They are light and provide good grip, but they are not durable. They wear out quickly on the rough roads. A traveler on a long journey would go through dozens of pairs. As a result, the roadsides were often littered with discarded straw sandals in various states of decay. This wasn't seen as littering, it was just a natural byproduct of travel. In fact, a savvy traveler could often guess how busy a road was or how recently a large procession had passed by the freshness and quantity of the discarded war AJ. When evening falls, you arrive at a post town. These towns are built for travelers. The main street is lined with inns, tea houses, and shops selling essentials like new sandals. You and your party check into an inn. The accommodations are basic. You might get a small private room, but often you'll be sharing a larger room with the rest of your group, or even with other travelers. There will be a communal privy out back, similar to the one at your Nag-AA, and if you're lucky, the inn will have its own bath. But the inn's bath comes with its own set of protocols and risks. It's usually a single wooden tub, and the same rules of water conservation apply as they did back in Edo. The water is used by all the guests. As part of an official retinue, you might get to bathe before the common merchants and pilgrims, but you are still sharing the water with your colleagues. And who knows who used it last night? Historians debate whether these post-town inns were of actors for disease, spreading sickness from one traveler to the next along the highways. Given the shared bedding, shared baths, and questionable water sources, it seems almost certain they were. You weigh the desire to soak your aching muscles against the murky appearance of the bathwater. Tonight, you decide a quick scrub with a bucket of hot water will have to suffice. You unroll your futon on the tatami floor, surrounded by the snores of your comrades, feeling the dust and miles in every bone of your body. Your journey on the road was a short-term inconvenience. But what if your travels were not for a simple escort mission, but for war while the Edo period was largely peaceful? The memory of the preceding Sengoku period, the Warring States era, was still fresh, and the samurai class was, in theory, always prepared for conflict. Imagine you are now not just a traveler, but a soldier in a massive army, marching to a distant campaign. The hygiene challenges you faced on the road are now magnified 100-fold. You are no longer an individual, but part of a vast, moving city of thousands of men and the logistics of keeping such a force healthy are staggering. Your new home is a military camp. When the army halts for the night or for a longer siege, a temporary city springs up. Tents are pitched, banners are raised, and simple fortifications are dug. The first and most critical issue is the location of the camp itself. A wise commander will choose a spot on high, dry ground, with a reliable source of fresh water, like a river, upstream from the camp. Choosing a spot downstream from a potential source of contamination, or in a marshy, low-lying area, is a recipe for disaster. Many historical campaigns were won or lost not by the sword, but by the silent attack of disease that swept through a poorly situated camp. Water discipline becomes a matter of life and death. You are under strict orders. All drinking water must be drawn from a designated upstream location, while a separate downstream area is allocated for washing horses, cleaning equipment, and bathing. Violating this rule could result in severe punishment. Even so, with thousands of men and animals living in close proximity, the main water source inevitably becomes contaminated. Dysentery, typhoid, and cholera were the invisible enemies that decimated armies far more effectively than any opposing samurai. Then, there is the monumental problem of waste. Imagine 10,000 men. That's 10,000 men who need to use the latrine every single day. There are no night soil merchants here to collect the valuable resource. The army has to deal with it themselves. The standard procedure is to dig long, deep trenches at the edge of the camp, away from the water source and the kitchens. These are the camp latrines. Planks are laid across them, and sometimes simple screens are erected for a sliver of privacy. But these latrine pits are a massive health hazard. They attract swarms of flies, which then travel from the pits to the food preparation areas, spreading disease with every step. In wet weather, the pits can overflow, spilling their contents into the camp. A little known but crucial role in any Japanese army was that of the Kobobagyo, or the officer in charge of construction and sanitation. His job was arguably one of the most important in the entire camp. He was responsible for siting the latrines, ensuring they were dug deep enough, and ordering them to be covered with earth regularly to control the flies and the smell. A good sanitation officer was worth more than a company of spearmen. Your personal hygiene takes a back seat to survival. Bathing is a rare luxury. You might get a chance to quickly wash in a cold river, but the priority is on getting clean enough, not on comfort. Your armor, which was so carefully tended in Edo, is now caked with mud and battered from the march. You do your best to keep the moving parts from rusting, but the sweat-soaked padding inside begins to rot, developing a permanent, sour mildew smell. Your clothes are worn for weeks on end, washed only when a halt in the march allows for it. Lice become a constant companion, a tiny torment that you and your comrades try to combat by picking them out of your clothes and hair during moments of rest. Historians studying the logistics of samurai armies are still amazed that they could function at all. There is a continuous debate about the true mortality rates from disease versus combat. While epic poems and chronicles tend to focus on heroic duels, the grim reality is that for every samurai who fell to an enemy's blade, several more likely succumbed to a fever in a squalid tent. Some military historians argue that the legendary discipline of the samurai was the key factor. The ability to enforce strict sanitation rules, even when the men were exhausted and demoralized, was what separated a successful army from a walking plague. Use it by the campfire, chewing on a piece of tough, dried rice cake, trying to ignore the itch in your scalp and the pervasive smell of wood smoke, mud, and unwashed humanity. You are a warrior, but your greatest battle is against an enemy you cannot see, hear, or fight with a sword. In the chaos of a military camp, or even just the rough and tumble of daily life, minor injuries are given. But what happens when you suffer something more serious than a simple scrape imagined during a training exercise? A lapse in concentration leads to a nasty gash on your forearm from a partner's wooden sword. It's deep, it's bleeding freely, and it needs immediate attention. There is no emergency room, no paramedics, and no sterile sutures. You are reliant on the often brutal and surprisingly inventive world of samurai first aid. Your comrades rush you not to a pristine white tent, but to the unit's designated medic, who might be a fellow samurai with some experience, or a low-ranking attendant whose job it is to patch people up. His methods are direct and based on a few core principles: stop the bleeding, clean the wound in their own way, and close it. The first priority is the bleeding. For a deep cut, applying pressure with a cloth is the first step. If that's not enough, more drastic measures are taken. One of the most common and dramatic techniques is cauterization. The medic will heat the flat edge of a knife or a specially designed iron tool in the campfire until it glows red. Then, with you gritting your teeth and possibly being held down by your friends, he will press the hot metal directly into the wound. The searing pain is immense, but the intense heat instantly sears the blood vessels shut, stopping the bleeding. It's a brutal, effective, and terrifyingly permanent solution. It also, coincidentally, sterilizes the wound surface with heat, an unintended but beneficial side effect. If cauterization is deemed too extreme, other stypticasts are used. You've already encountered hoko, the charred cattle ash. For minor cuts, for a larger wound, a thick paste might be made from ash, clay, and certain herbs believed to have blood-stopping properties. Another surprising but historically documented method was to pack the wound with fresh, clean moss, particularly Sagana moss. This particular type of moss is highly absorbent, far more so than cotton, and also has mild antiseptic properties due to its acidity. It was nature's perfect field dressing, used by cultures all over the world. Once the bleeding is under control, the wound needs to be cleaned. This doesn't mean washing it with soap and water, which was often thought to be harmful. Instead, cleaning might involve pouring strong sake or even urine into the gash. While pouring urine on a wound sounds repulsive, it was a common practice in many pre-modern societies. Fresh urine is largely sterile and the ammonia and urea can have some mild cleansing effects. Sake, with its alcohol content, would have also acted as a crude antiseptic, stinging fiercely but killing some surface bacteria. After the wound is cleaned to their satisfaction, it needs to be closed. If it's a clean slice, they might simply bind it tightly with clean strips of cloth. There was no widespread use of sutures as we know them. The idea of sewing skin together with a fine needle and thread was not a standard part of a field medic's toolkit. Instead, they relied on binding and pressure. A more peculiar method, sometimes mentioned in old texts, is a form of insect suture. For a clean gash, a large ant or beetle with powerful mandibles would be held over the wound, prompted to bite across the gap, holding the skin together. The body of the insect would then be twisted off, leaving the head and its clamped jaws in place as a natural, biodegradable staple. It's one of those historical curiosities that sounds almost too strange to be true. Historians and medical experts are still in a lively debate over the survival rates from such treatments. Was cauterization a lifesaver that prevented bleeding out, or did it often lead to worse infections by sealing contaminants inside the wound? How effective were these folk antiseptics? The academic consensus is that the biggest killer was the initial injury, but the subsequent infection, tetanus, or lakehud, was a constant then terrifying threat from any deep puncture wound. Without an understanding of bacteria, there was no way to effectively prevent it. Your comrades have finished bandaging your arm. The throbbing pain is intense, but the bleeding has stopped. You are given a cup of strong sake, both to dull the pain and to purify your blood. Now, the waiting game begins. You lie in your tent, feverishly hoping that the medic's rough care was enough, and that the real battle, the one your body will fight against invisible invaders, will be won. So far, our journey has been relentlessly male-focused, centered on your experience as a samurai. But what about the other half of the population? The hygiene habits and challenges of women in this era are a crucial and often overlooked part of the story. Let's shift our perspective for a moment. Imagine you are not the samurai, but his wife, managing the household within the same nagae or a slightly more spacious residence. Your world of hygiene is governed by a different set of expectations, rituals, and biological realities. Your daily cleanliness routine is similar in some ways to your husband's. You frequent the sentu, though at different times or in a separate, designated women's section, or you might use the family furrow at home, likely bathing after your husband. Your clothing, intricate kimonos of softer fabrics and brighter patterns, is cared for with the same painstaking process of unstitching, spot cleaning, and daring out. But your appearance is subject to a different, and arguably more demanding, set of standards. A woman's hair, for instance, is her pride. Unlike the samurai's practical topknot, a woman of the warrior class would wear her hair long, often floor-length and elaborate, sculpted styles held in place with combs, pins, and the same sticky pomade. The BTS UK Bureau. Washing this immense quantity of hair was an epic undertaking, performed far less frequently than even a man would wash his, perhaps once a month, or even less. The process could take an entire day. Between washings, the hair was kept clean by meticulous combing and the application of powders, like rice powder, to absorb oil. The smell of the hair oil, mixed with fragrant incense burned for scenting, was a signature part of a woman's presence. Then there is the matter of cosmetics. A pale, white face was the height of beauty. To achieve this, you would apply a thick, white foundation called oshiroi. The main ingredient in this powder was, unfortunately, often lead. It provided a brilliant, opaque white finish, but it was also a cumulative poison. Over years of use, it could cause severe skin damage, internal health problems, and even nerve damage. It's a tragic example of the dangerous lengths people would go for beauty. On top of this white base, you would paint small, red lips. The smaller, the more fashionable, and delicately shape your eyebrows. Many married women would shave off their eyebrows completely and paint on a soft, smudged new pair higher on the forehead. But the most significant and private challenge was managing menstruation. In a world without disposable pads or tampons, this was a matter of ingenuity and discretion. The most common method was to use folded pads of soft, absorbent cloth, often made from old, worn-out cotton from a recycled kimono. These would be held in place by a special undergarment, a kind of loincloth called a koshi-maki. After use, these cloths had to be washed by hand, usually in cold water to avoid setting stains, and dried discreetly, away from public view. It was a constant, laborious cycle of use and washing. A more surprising and less commonly known method involved a type of natural tampon. Women would use materials like rolled-up paper, soft moss, or even wads of cattle fluff, fashioning them into absorbent plugs. The use of these internal methods is a topic of some debate among historians, as the evidence is often sparse and found in personal accounts or medical texts rather than mainstream literature. It was a deeply private matter, rarely discussed openly. The cultural attitudes surrounding menstruation were complex. In Shinto belief, blood, especially menstrual blood, was considered a form of pollution, or keg. This wasn't a moral judgment, but a concept of ritual impurity. A menstruating woman was considered unclean and was often expected to avoid certain activities. She might not be allowed to enter the main shrine area of a temple, participate in certain religious rituals, or even, in some strict households, cook for the family or share a bath. In some rural communities, there were even special menstrual huts where women would isolate themselves for the duration of their period. While these practices seem isolating and discriminatory from a modern perspective, some scholars argue that they might have also been viewed by the women themselves as a sanctioned period of rest from their daily chores. This interpretation is, naturally, a subject of ongoing and sensitive, academic debate. As a woman running a samurai household, your life is a constant, delicate balance. You are maintaining the physical and ritual purity of your home, managing the family's health with herbal remedies, and dealing with your own personal hygiene in a world that offers few conveniences. Your hands are chapped from endless washing in cold water. Your skin might be slowly absorbing lead from your makeup, but you uphold the standards of your class with grace and resilience. Your contribution to the family's honor is not on the battlefield, but in the quiet, relentless, and often invisible work of maintaining order and cleanliness in a challenging world. You've settled into the rhythm of your Edo life. You've mastered the art of sleeping on a wooden pillow. You no longer flinch at the taste of salty tooth powder, and you can navigate the sin to like a local. You've made your peace with the external world of dirt and smells, but now you must confront a new, more intimate challenge, the world of tiny creatures that want to share your home, your clothes, and even your body. In an age before pesticides and obsessive cleaning, you don't just live in your house, you live with a whole ecosystem of uninvited guests. Your most constant companions are fleas and lice. They are an unavoidable fact of life. The tatami mats that cover your floor, with their tightly woven straw, are the perfect breeding ground for fleas. They thrive in the spaces between the weaves, emerging to feast on any warm-blooded creature that happens to be nearby, which is you. You'll often find yourself scratching at small, itchy red welts on your ankles and legs. People would sometimes try to combat this by taking their tatami mats outside on a sunny day and beating them vigorously with a stick, a process that would dislodge some of the dust, fleas, and their eggs, but it was a temporary victory at best. Lice are even more personal. They live in the seams of your clothing and in your hair. The elaborate, oiled hairstyles of both men and women, which were washed so infrequently, were a paradise for them. A fine-toothed comb, often made of boxwood, was an essential tool not just for styling, but for literally combing the lice in their eggs, or nits, out of the hair. This was a daily ritual, a quiet, patient battle against a persistent infestation. It wasn't considered a sign of being particularly dirty. It was just a common nuisance that everyone dealt with. Then, there are the larger pests. At night, when the city falls quiet, you can hear the soft scuttling sounds of rats in the walls and ceiling. They are a constant presence in a city built of wood and filled with small, open-air food stalls. They are bold and clever, capable of getting into your small stash of rice or nibbling on your vegetables if you leave them unprotected. People developed simple but effective storage solutions, like hanging food from the ceiling in baskets to keep it out of reach. Cats were, of course, highly valued members of the household, not just as pets, but as professional, full-time pest control officers. A good mouser was worth its weight in rice. Beyond the mammals and insects, there's the world of things that crawl and fly. Cockroaches are common, especially around the kitchen area. Spiders spin their webs in the corners of your room. You might be tempted to clear them away, but you'll soon learn that spiders are your allies, catching flies, mosquitoes, and other annoying insects. Killing a spider was often considered bad luck, a practical piece of folklore designed to protect a beneficial house guest. In the summer, the air is thick with mosquitoes, bred in the stagnant water of the cities, canals, and moats. You sleep under a coarse linen or hemp mosquito net, or kaya, if you can afford one. It makes the hot, humid nights even stuff IER, but it's preferable to being eaten alive. A particularly curious bit of pest control trivia from the era involves a unique type of trap for cockroaches. It was a small ceramic pot with a roughened, unglazed interior and a lip coated with a fragrant bait, like rice bran oil. The cockroach would be attracted by the smell, crawl over the lip, and drop inside, but it couldn't get back out because its feet couldn't get a grip on the rough interior surface. These were sold by street vendors and were a common sight in kitchens. Historians often discuss how this constant, close-quarters interaction with pests shaped the worldview of the people. There wasn't the same level of horror or disgust that a modern person might feel upon finding a flea. It was a state of coexistence. The academic debate often centers on the hygiene hypothesis in a historical context. Did this constant exposure to a universe of microbes and small creatures from a young age led to a more robust immune system, protecting people from allergies and autoimmune diseases that are so common today it's impossible to prove definitively? But it's a compelling idea. You lie on your futon, scratching at a fresh flea bite on your ankle. You can hear a faint scratching sound from above your head, which you choose to believe is just the house settling. You've learned to live with your tiny roommates. They are a part of the texture of life, a reminder that your home isn't a sterile bubble, but a living, breathing, and sometimes itchy, part of the vast, interconnected ecosystem of Edo. Now that you become intimately familiar with the smells of your own small world, your room, your clothes, the local dojo, it's time to broaden your sensory horizons. You decide to take a long walk through Edo, not with a destination in mind, but with the simple goal of paying attention to what the city smells like. You're going to create a scent map in your mind, and in doing so, you'll come to understand the city's inner workings in a whole new way. You start in your own residential neighborhood of low-ranking samurai and commoners. The baseline scent here is domestic wood smoke from countless cooking fires, the salty tang of miso soup simmering, and the ever-present, earthy background note from the nearby latrine pits and drainage ditches. It's the smell of life being lived, dense and concentrated. As you walk, the smells shift with each passing doorway. From one house, you catch the sharp, clean scent of grated daikon radish. From another, the sweet, heavy aroma of incense. It's a patchwork of individual household smells. You move towards one of the city's major arteries, a bustling commercial street. The air changes immediately. It becomes sharper, more complex, and much louder. You are now in the territory of merchants and craftsmen. You pass a dyer's shop, and the air is thick with the chemical, slightly acrid smell of indigo vats. It's a smell that clings to the back of your throat. A few doors down is a candle maker, and the rich, waxy, slightly fishy smell of his wares hangs in a cloud around his storefront. You pass a blacksmith's forge, and the hot, metallic scent of heated iron and coal smoke billows out into the street. Each shop has its own distinct olfactory signature. You wander into a market area, and the sensory overload kicks into high gear. This is the stomach of Edo. The air is a chaotic symphony of smells, all competing for your attention. In the fish section, the air is heavy with the briny, iodine-rich smell of the sea, mixed with the sharper scent of fish that have been sitting in the sun for a few hours too long. You see vendors gutting fish on wooden boards, the smell of blood and viscera mingling with the salt. Next to them is the vegetable section, a riot of fresh, green, and earthy smell soil still clinging to root vegetables, the peppery scent of fresh herbs, the pungent kick of onions and garlic. And everywhere, there are the pickle vendors, their open barrels releasing a sharp, vinegary, fermented cloud that makes your mouth water and your eyes sting at the same time. Seeking refuge, you turn down a quieter side street and find yourself near a large temple complex. The air here changes again, becoming calmer and more refined. The dominant scent is the deep, resinous aroma of high-quality incense, primarily sandalwood and aloes wood, burned in great bronze censers. It's a smell designed to inspire reverence and peace. Mixed with it is the clean, old wood smell of the temple buildings themselves, and the faint, green scent of the carefully raked moss gardens. It's a pocket of olfactory tranquility in the middle of the chaotic city. A curious piece of trivia related to the city's smells involves the river. The Sumida River was the main artery of Edo, and its smell changed depending on the season and the time of day. In the morning, it might carry the scent of fresh fish from the boats coming in from the bay. In the afternoon, after a rain, it would smell of mud and runoff from the city streets. And in the summer, certain sections of it, particularly the stagnant canals, would develop a heavy, sulfur smell of decay, a scent that the city's poets sometimes refer to as the dragon's breath. Historians, particularly those in the growing field of sensory history, are trying to reconstruct these lost smellscapes of the past. It's a difficult task, as smells are ephemeral and rarely described in detail in historical documents. They debate which smells would have been considered good or bad by the people of the time. While we might find the smell of the canals repulsive, was it just a normal, neutral part of the background for an 18th century resident? It's likely that their tolerance for what we consider bad smells was infinitely higher. A bad smell to them might have been something that signaled immediate danger, like the smell of a serious illness or a truly rotten, disease-carrying piece of food. As the sun begins to set, you make your way back towards Nage. You pass a theater, and the air is thick with the scent of lamp oil, cheap perfume, and the press of a large, excited crowd. You've walked for miles, and your brain is buzzing with the information it has gathered through your nose. You realize that to live in Edo is to be fluent in a language of smells. The city speaks through its aromas, telling you where you are, what is happening, and who is around you. It's a language you're only just beginning to learn, but one that tells the story of the city more vividly than any map or book ever could. You've lived the life of a low-ranking samurai, a world of making do, of shared resources and a constant, low-level grimace. But this is only one slice of the samurai experience. What about the top of the pyramid? What was life like for a daimyo? One of the powerful feudal lords who ruled over entire provinces and maintained lavish residences. In Edo you get a rare opportunity to find out, being assigned a temporary duty as a guard at the gate of one of these grand estates. And you quickly learn that while wealth can buy a great deal of comfort, it can't entirely escape the fundamental hygienic realities of the era. The first thing you notice is the scale. The daimyo's residence is not a single building, but a massive walled compound covering several city blocks. It has sprawling gardens, multiple mansions for the lord and his family, barracks for his samurai retainers, stables, and storehouses. The sheer space is a luxury. Unlike your crowded Nage, there is a sense of airiness and separation. The kitchens are in a completely separate building from the living quarters, as are the latrines. This architectural separation is the first and most effective form of hygiene control. As a gate guard, you observe the daily workings of the estate. You see the water bearers. They don't use a single communal well. The estate has its own private wells, which are deeper, that are maintained, and exclusively for the household. The water is still boiled for drinking, but the source is inherently more secure. You see the servants. There is an army of them, and a significant portion of their daily work is cleaning. Floors are swept and polished daily. Courtyards are raked. Dust is not allowed to settle. You get a glimpse of the daimyo's personal hygiene rituals, and they are on another level. He has his own private bathroom, a beautiful room made of cypress wood, with a deep soaking tub for while his ancestors might have shared bathwater. A lord of this stature would likely have fresh, hot water drawn for him every single day, a luxury that would seem unimaginably wasteful to the average person. He uses not coarse rice bran powder, but a finer, perfumed, soap-like substance made with special herbs. His toilet, or setsuin, is also a work of art. It's located in a pristine little room overlooking a private garden. The bowl might be a fine piece of porcelain, and instead of a simple pit, there might be a system of sand or ash that is changed by a servant after every use. And that brings us to the ultimate status symbol in the world of Edo period waste. While the night soil from your Nage was sold to farmers, the excrement of the shogun himself was considered so special, so potent, that it wasn't used as fertilizer. According to some historical accounts, it was carefully sealed in clay jars and stored, almost as if it were a sacred relic. While your daimyo lord isn't the shogun, the principle is similar. His waste is handled with the utmost care and discretion, far removed from the commercial transactions of the common folk. But even with all this wealth, some problems persist. The daimyo's food is elaborate and plentiful. He dines on fresh seafood, a variety of vegetables, and copious amounts of polished white rice. This means he is, if anything, even more susceptible to the Edo ailment, Barabiri, than you are. In fact, Barabiri was so common among the wealthy elite that it was sometimes seen as a strange badge of honor, a sign that you were rich enough to afford the best food. And the pests don't respect social status. While the main residence is kept impeccably clean, the stables, storehouses, and servants' quarters of the vast estate are still havens for rats, fleas, and cockroaches. They might be less visible in the Lord's personal chambers, but the ecosystem of the compound is just as active as in your Nagai. The Lord's expensive silk kimonos still need to be aired out and protected from moths, and his elaborate hairstyle is just as welcoming to lice as yours is. Historians are still debating the actual health outcomes of the elite versus the commoners. Did the cleaner living conditions and better diet of the daimyo lead to a longer life? Or were these benefits offset by lifestyle diseases like Barabirian? The toxic effects of their lead-based makeup. The evidence is mixed. Skeletal remains sometimes show that the wealthy had more signs of nutritional stress and certain diseases than the peasantry, who had a more varied, if coarser, diet. Wealth bought comfort and isolation from the filth of the city, but it couldn't buy perfect health. It created a different set of vulnerabilities. Standing at your post, you watch a servant hurry by with a steaming bucket of water for the master's bath. You look back in the direction of your own neighborhood. Life here in the grand estate is certainly cleaner, quieter, and more fragrant, but you realize it's not a different world, it's just a gilded cage in the same messy, vibrant, and smelly city of Edo. After your brief assignment at the daimyo's estate, you return to your own humble world with a new perspective. You've seen how wealth can mitigate some of the grime of daily life, but you've also noticed that for everyone, from the highest lord to the lowest commoner, there's another layer of hygiene that is just as, if not more, important spiritual cleanliness. This concept is deeply woven into the fabric of Japanese society, primarily through the native religion of Shinto. You start to notice it everywhere. Before entering the grounds of a temple or shrine, there is always a water basin, a trosi with long-handled wooden ladles. Here, worshippers perform a ritual purification called Team Iza. You watch and learn. You take a ladle in your right hand, fill it with fresh, cool water, and pour some over your left hand. Then you switch hands and rinse your right. You switch again, pouring a little water into your cupped left hand, and use it to rinse your mouth, spitting the water out discreetly beside the basin. Finally, you rinse your left hand once more and tip the ladle upright so the remaining water runs down the handle, cleaning it for the next person. This act is not about physical hygiene. You are not washing with soap. It is a symbolic act of purifying yourself of the dust and spiritual pollution, or kegar, of the outside world before you approach the sacred space of the kami, or gods. Kegar is a central concept in Shinto. It's not sin in the Western sense of a moral failing. It's a state of impurity that comes from contact with things like dirt, disease, and especially death. It's a natural part of life, but it must be cleansed through ritual to restore your balance and purity. Artiomi. This belief extends into the home. Before the start of the new year, for instance, the entire household engages in a massive cleaning spree, although SOG, or the big cleaning. Every corner of the house is scrubbed, old items are discarded, and everything is put in order. On the surface, it's simple house cleaning, but its deeper meaning is to sweep away the accumulated grime and bad luck of the past year, purifying the home to welcome the New Year's gods. You also see this principle in the attitude towards salt. Salt is not just a seasoning, it's a powerful purifying agent. After attending a funeral, a somber occasion deeply associated with Keg-R, people will stop at the entrance to their home and have a family member sprinkle salt over their shoulders to cleanse them before they re-enter. You see small piles of salt, called morijaya, placed at the entrance to restaurants and shops. This is not for cooking, it's a Shinto practice meant to purify the entrance and ward off evil spirits, attracting good fortune in customers. A particularly interesting and subtle example of this is the Japanese love of bathing. Your nightly soak in the sand or a home furrow is physically cleansing. Yes, but it's also a form of daily ritual purification, the act of immersing your entire body in hot, clean water is seen as a way to wash away not just the dirt of the day, but also the fatigue, the stress, and the minor keg you've accumulated. It's a restoration of the body and the spirit. This is why the bath is a place of relaxation and quiet contemplation, not just a place to scrub. Historians and sociologists are still engaged in a fascinating debate about the relationship between these two types of cleanliness. Did the Shinto emphasis on ritual purification lead to the Japanese people developing a high standard of physical hygiene, or was it the other way around? Did a practical, pre-existing need for cleanliness in a hot, humid, and crowded environment get codified and elevated into religious ritual? It's a classic chicken and egg question with no clear answer. The two concepts are so deeply intertwined that it's impossible to separate them. Physical dirtiness is a form of spiritual impurity, and spiritual purity is often expressed through physical cleanliness. You stand at the choji, yuya of a small neighborhood shrine. The cool water from the ladle running over your hands. You perform the ritual, feeling the symbolic weight of the actions. It doesn't make your hands surgically sterile, but it changes your state of mind. You feel calmer, more focused, and ready to enter the sacred space. You realize that, in this world, a clean body and a clean spirit are two sides of the same coin. The endless fight against dirt, sweat, and smells is not just a matter of public health or personal comfort. It is a deeply spiritual quest for balance and purity in a world where the sacred and the profane are always side by side. You've learned to navigate the daily and spiritual hygiene of Edo. You have your routines, your tolerances, your little tricks to feel passably clean. But just as you think you have it all figured out, the world around you changes. The relentless cycle of the seasons in Japan brings with it a whole new set of challenges, turning your established routines upside down and forcing you to adapt or be miserable. First comes the summer, and summer in Edo is not a gentle, sunny affair. It is the rainy season, or tsuyu, a period of weeks on end characterized by oppressive heat and near constant, suffocating humidity. The air becomes thick and heavy, like a wet blanket you can't throw off. And with the humidity comes its insidious partner, mold. It grows everywhere. You open your storage chest to get a change of clothes and find a fine, greenish-black fuzz growing on a kimono you haven't worn in a while. The tatami mats feel perpetually damp under your feet and emit a musty, earthy smell. The food in your kitchen spoils twice as fast. Wooden utensils feel slick to the touch. Fighting the mold is a constant, losing battle. On the rare sunny days, the entire city seems to collectively exhale, as everyone throws open their shoji screens and hangs their futons, clothes, and other belongings outside to air out in the precious sunlight. This practice, called mushibashe, is essential for preventing everything you own from succumbing to rotten mildew. The humidity also makes personal hygiene a nightmare. You can take a bath, but the moment you step out, a fresh sheen of sweat covers your skin. Your meticulously oiled hair feels heavy and greasy. The odors of the city, the canals, the waste, the crowd seem to hang in the thick, stagnant air, becoming more potent and inescapable. Then, just as you are about to melt, the season shifts. Autumn arrives, bringing a brief, glorious respite of cool, crisp air. This is the best time of year, a time of clear skies and low humidity. It's a time for deep cleaning, for airing out the house from the summer's dampness, and for simply enjoying the feeling of being dry. But it is fleeting. Winter comes next, and it brings the opposite problem. The air is dry and cold. The wind whistles through the cracks in your paper-screened walls. Your small charcoal hibachi provides a tiny island of warmth in your freezing room, but it's not enough to heat the whole space. Now, the last thing you want to do is get undressed for a bath. The thought of stepping out of a hot tub into the frigid air is enough to make you shiver. The frequency of bathing drops dramatically for many people. A trip to the Send becomes a carefully planned mission, involving a brisk walk there and a mad dash back home before the cold seeps back into your bones. The cold also makes washing clothes a miserable chore. Plunging your hands into a bucket of icy water to scrub a garment is a painful necessity. The clothes take forever to dry, hanging stiffly in the cold air. Consequently, clothes are worn for much longer between washes in the winter. The focus shifts from fighting sweat and grime to simply conserving body heat. People pile on layers of clothing, which are shed one by one as they huddle around the brazier. A fascinating piece of winter-related hygiene trivia is the use of karo, or pocket warmers. The original karo was a small, heated stone or a special metal tin filled with hot ash or powdered charcoal, wrapped in cloth and tucked into the folds of a kimono. It was a personal, portable heat source. These little warmers were not just for comfort, they were a way to stave off the health problems associated with the cold, keeping the body's core temperature up and fighting off the chills that traditional medicine believed were the root of many illnesses. Historians often emphasize how this dramatic seasonal swing dictated the rhythm of life in Japan. It's a key point of debate whether the summer or the winter posed a greater threat to public health. Was it the disease-spreading insects and rampant food spoilage of the hot, humid summer, or was it the respiratory illnesses, the reluctance to bathe, and the risks of fire and carbon monoxide poisoning from indoor heaters in the cold? Dry winter each season had its own distinct set of dangers. You sit in your room, huddled over your hibachi, the warmth barely reaching your face. You are wearing 3 layers of clothing and can see your breath in the air. You think back to the sweltering, sticky days of summer, when you longed for a cool breeze. Now, you'd give anything for a bit of that heat. You've learned that hygiene in this world isn't a static set of rules. It's a constant negotiation with the environment. You are always adapting, always compromising, always fighting a different battle depending on the time of year. And as you listen to the winter wind rattle your paper screens, you know that the cycle will soon begin again. The seasons continue their relentless cycle, and the years pass. You've become a true resident of Edo, weathered by its summers and winters, accustomed to its ways. But now, a new wind is blowing, not from the mountains or the sea, but from much farther away. It carries with it strange new ideas, technologies, and smells. The mid-19th century is dawning, and the long, self-imposed isolation of Japan is beginning to crack. Black ships from the West have arrived, and with them comes a profound culture shock that will ripple through every aspect of Japanese life, right down to the most personal habits of hygiene. The first encounters are tentative. You see them from a distance at first, the Nan Banjin, or Southern Barbarians, as the Westerners are called. They look and smell different. They wear strange, tight-fitting woolen clothes, and they have a scent you can't quite place. It's not the familiar smell of wood smoke or incense. Some say it's the smell of butter and livestock, a diet rich in animal products that is foreign to the Japanese palate. Then, the new objects begin to appear in the port cities and gradually filter into Edo. One of the most revolutionary of these is soap. Of course, you've had soap-like substances before: the rice bran powder, the various herbal pastes. But this is different. It's a solid bar that produces a rich, thick lather and has a strong, perfumed scent. At first, it's an expensive, exotic luxury item, used only by the very wealthy or those who are trying to emulate the Westerners. It's so strange that people aren't always sure what to do with it. There are amusing accounts from the time of people receiving bars of soap as gifts and, unsure of their purpose, trying to eat them like sweets. But gradually, its use becomes understood. A trip to the Seine starts to change. You might see a man in the washing area proudly lathering up with a bar of French soap, the floral scent cutting through the familiar steam-in with smells of the bathish. It's a sign of sophistication, of being modern and worldly. Along with soap comes the Western concept of germ theory. Dutch medical texts, known as Rang AKU or Dutch learning, had been trickling into Japan for some time, but now, with increased contact, these ideas begin to spread more rapidly. A new generation of Japanese doctors starts to study Western medicine. They learn about bacteria and viruses, about contagion and sanitation. They begin to question the traditional theories of qi and miasma. This creates a huge clash. You might hear a debate between an old Kenpo physician who insists your fever is caused by an imbalance of the 5 elements, and a young, Western-trained doctor who claims it's caused by invisible microbes you ingested from contaminated water. This new knowledge starts to change public health. The government, in the subsequent Meiji era, will begin massive campaigns to clean up the cities. They'll build modern sewer systems, replacing the open canals in the night soil economy. They will promote hand washing with soap and water as a way to prevent disease. The shared towel custom begins to decline, replaced by the idea that each person should have their own. The practice of teeth blackening, Taoigarua, once a mark of beauty, quickly comes to be seen as a barbaric, old-fashioned custom and is officially banned. White, natural teeth become the new standard of beauty. Even the iconic samurai hairstyle, the Chon-mage, becomes a victim of this modernization. As the samurai class is officially dissolved and Japan rushes to build a Western-style army and society, the top knot is seen as a symbol of the feudal past. In 1871, the government issues the Dampachora Edict, cutting the top knot order, encouraging men to adopt short, Western-style haircuts. Many samurai resist, clinging to their top knot as the last symbol of their identity. But the tide of change is too strong. You see more and more men on the streets of Edo, now renamed Tokyo, with short, unoiled hair. It's a visual representation of a world being turned upside down. Historians are still fascinated by this period of intense and rapid change. The debate often focuses on whether this was a genuine modernization or a westernization. Was Japan simply adopting superior technologies and ideas? Or was it wholesale replacing its own rich cultural practices with foreign ones in an attempt to catch up with the West in the realm of hygiene? It was a complex mix. The introduction of soap and germ theory undoubtedly saved millions of lives. But it also led to the loss of unique cultural practices and a deep-seated sense of cultural identity. You stand at a crossroads in time. The familiar smells and routines of your world are fading, being replaced by the scent of carbolic soap and the strange logic of microscopes. The city is getting cleaner, safer, and quieter in some ways, but something is also being lost. The old world, with all its grime, its smells, and its strange, resilient wisdom, is slipping away, becoming a story to be told rather than a life to be lived. The black ships have come and gone. The top knot is a thing of the past, and the world you knew has irrevocably changed. Before you take your leave of this era, you take a moment to stand still and let the memories wash over you, not memories of events, but of sensations. You've lived a life so different from the one you came from, and it's the physical, sensory details that will stick with you the most. You decide to take one last inventory. A final look back at the taste and smell of being a samurai in old Edo. You remember the feeling of your feet on the different surfaces of the city, the cool, smooth, slightly yielding texture of the tatami mats in your room, the hard, uneven packed earth of the side streets, and the fine, pervasive dust that would coat your sandals and ankles. The slick, sometimes slimy wooden planks of the bridges over the canals, a feel of 1,000 different textures underfoot, a constant, tactile connection to the ground you walked on. You recall the smells, a library of aromas now catalogued in your mind. You can conjure the precise scent of your nage, on a wet morning a combination of damp wood, the smoke from your neighbor's cooking fire, and the faint, ever-present ammoniac tang from the communal privy. You can remember the smell of the dojo, that unique blend of old sweat, polishing oil, and intense focus. You can differentiate between the high church scent of expensive aloes wood incense at a grand temple and the cheap, sweet-smelling incense burned at a small neighborhood shrine. You remember the overwhelming, chaotic perfume of the marketplace, a place where the smells of life and death, fresh and rotting, all mingled in a single, powerful wave. You think about the tastes, the overwhelming saltiness of everything, the pickled vegetables, the cured fish, the soy sauce that seasoned every meal, the pure, clean taste of a perfect bowl of steamed white rice, a flavor that was both a staple and a status symbol. The bitter, shocking taste of the herbal medicine you had to drink when you were sick, a flavor you associated with healing. And the simple, pure taste of hot, slightly smoky water, the boiled well water that was the foundation of every tea, soup, and drink you consumed. And the sounds, the constant, soft clatter of wooden gede on the streets, a sound so ubiquitous it was the city's heartbeat. The rhythmic thwack of a laundry paddle against wet clothes, the high-pitched calls of the street vendors selling everything from hot sweet potatoes to goldfish, the whisper of paper shoji screens sliding open and closed, the snores of your comrades in a shared-in room, a sound of profound exhaustion and trust. You realize that silence was the rarest of commodities. You also remember the feelings that have no modern equivalent, the slightly sticky, heady feeling of your oiled hair, a sensation you were acutely aware of every waking moment, the suffocating, intense heat inside a suit of armor, and the profound relief of taking it off, the rough, scratchy texture of a new strass and all against the sole of your foot, the specific discomfort of sleeping with your neck on a hard takama kurka to preserve your top knot. These are feelings your 21st century body had to learn, adapt to, and ultimately accept as normal. A controversial topic among sensory historians is the idea of a lost sense. They debate whether pre-modern people, living without the constant visual and auditory stimulation of our world, had a more highly developed sense of smell or touch. Were they more attuned to the subtle changes in the air, the feel of the weather on their skin, the scent of an approaching rainstorm? It's impossible to know for sure, but after your time here, it feels true. Your senses have been your primary tools for navigating the world, for detecting danger, for finding comfort, and for understanding the people around you. They have been sharpened by necessity. You look at your hands. They are calloused from the practiced sword, the skin rougher and more weathered than before. They are the hands of someone who has lived a different life. You came to this world to learn about its hygiene, about its dirt and grime, and you learned that, yes, by modern standards, it was a filthy world. But it wasn't a world devoid of its own logic, its own standards of cleanliness, and its own unique, powerful beauty. The taste of this era wasn't just in its food, it was in the air you breathed, the water you drank, and the very ground you walked on. It was a full-bodied, multi-sensory experience that you will never forget. The world is shifting under your feet, and you know your time here is drawing to a close. The journey is over. It's time to go home. You take one last walk through the streets of the city, which is now more frequently being called Tokyo than Edo. The change is no longer subtle, it's a tidal wave. The city you came to know, with its specific smells and textures, is being scrubbed away and repainted with the colors of the new era. You see a man in a Western-style suit, looking stiff and uncomfortable in the formal woolen attire, walking next to a man still in a traditional kimono. You see men with short, cropped hair everywhere, their bare necks looking strangely vulnerable without the familiar top knot. The most jarring change is the absence of swords, a government edict. The HA has been passed, forbidding the samurai class from wearing their swords in public. The days how the pair of long and short swords that were the very soul of the samurai are now gone from the streets. A samurai without his swords feels like a sentence that has lost its verb. He is no longer a warrior, he is just a man. The samurai class, after centuries of ruling Japan, has been officially abolished. This frantic rush to modernize creates moments of profound, almost comical, cultural awkwardness. You hear stories of former samurai, now trying to find work as government officials or businessmen, attending their first Western-style banquet. They are confronted with a bewildering array of forks, knives, and spoons, after a lifetime of elegant, precise work with chopsticks. The act of cutting a piece of meat with a knife and fork is a clumsy, frustrating ordeal. A man who could face down an enemy with a blade without flinching is now utterly defeated by a dinner roll and a butter knife. It's a small, humanizing detail in a vast, impersonal historical change. You pass by what used to be the grand estate of a daimyo. The gates are open. The walls are coming down. The land is being repurposed for a new government ministry or university. The private, privileged world of the feudal lord is being dismantled. Piece by piece, you think of the men you knew, the men you trained with in the dojo, the men you shared a cup of sake with. What has become of them? They have lost their masters, their stipends, and their very reason for being. This leads to the great, unresolved question that historians still grapple with: what was the psychological cost of this sudden, violent modernization? How does an entire class of professional warriors cope with being told they are obsolete, some adapted, cutting their hair, trading their sword for an abacus or a briefcase, and finding success in the new Japan? But many others were left adrift, impoverished and stripped of their honor and identity. This profound sense of loss and dislocation is seen by many scholars as a key factor in the political instability and fervent nationalism that would characterize Japan in the coming decades. The soul of a nation was being reforged, and the process was painful and hot. As you walk, the edges of the world begin to soften. The sharp clatter of a carriage's wheels on a newly paved street begins to sound distant. The face of a man in a bowler hat seems to blur. The sensory details that were once so overwhelming are now fading, like a dream upon waking. The smell of coal smoke and wet earth recedes, and the feeling of the rough fabric of your kimono against your skin begins to dissolve. You are leaving. You close your eyes, and when you open them again, the world of the samurai is gone. You are standing in a small, quiet room, bathed in a soft, steady, electric light. You feel an overwhelming sense of cleanliness. You walk into your modern bathroom. You turn a simple metal knob, and hot, clean water instantly gushes out. Endlessly, you press a lever, and the toilet flushes with a quiet, powerful whoosh, its contents disappearing to a place you don't even have to think about. You pick up a bar of soap, a simple, cheap, mass-produced object, and lather your hands. The scent is mild. The feeling is smooth, and the result is a level of sterile cleanliness that the most powerful daimyo could only have dreamed of. You feel a profound, bone-deep gratitude for these simple, invisible miracles. You have never felt so clean in your entire life. The journey is over now, and you are back in the familiar comfort of your own bed. The feeling of the soft, clean sheets against your skin is a quiet luxury. The story is beginning to fade, its sharp edges softening. The vivid smells and sounds of Edo dissolving into the gentle hum of the room around you. The clatter of wooden sandals on a dirt road becomes the soft whirring of a fan. The pungent smell of pickles and wood smoke melts away, leaving only the neutral, peaceful scent of your own quiet space. Your thoughts are beginning to drift, floating on the last echoes of the tale. You can feel the weight of your own comfortable pillow under your head. A world away from the hard, wooden takamakurka, the tight, itchy feeling of the samurai's top knot is a distant memory, replaced by the simple freedom of your own hair at rest. The story is becoming a part of your own dream now, its characters and scenes weaving themselves into the hazy, shifting landscape of your subconscious. You are no longer just listening. You are drifting. You are dreaming. Let the last bits of the world we visited float away like lanterns on a river. There is nothing left to do now but rest. Feel the gentle pull of sleep, and let it take you. Sleep now. The end of the article. Good night.